Okay, you should see the recording icon now, right? So we can get started. Yeah, hello. What's the purpose of this screencast? So the purpose of the screencast to talk a bit about Docker and setting up the GDK to work properly with a GitLab runner so that you are able to run CI pipelines locally in your GDK. And for example, the purpose for the purpose of mocking security products more easily, or even running the security products. Yeah, so let's talk a bit about Docker. Just in case you don't have too much experience, and what we are going to do. So we are going to use Docker machine to install Docker on our Mac or on any PC. Why do I choose Docker machine over Docker for Mac, for example, or a native solution? Because first of all, I have experience with it. Second of all, it's cross-platform, so it should work for any platform. And I really like the idea because Docker machine essentially runs Docker in a virtual machine on VirtualBox that you can contain it. So if you ever do a mistake or the GitLab-ci runner starts a job that takes all the CPU or whatever, it's contained, and it's also better for security because it doesn't have direct access to your hard disk, for example, and it doesn't have direct access to your to your machine. Basically, it's a little bit less performance sometimes, but I really like the idea of having it contained so that your computer doesn't crash if something runs out of bounds. So. And we actually have a great introduction on setting this up, but I think if you're missing a bit of context, this can be quite hard, and that's why we're doing the call. So what we're going to do is we're going to change some of our settings in the GDK. So basically that you give a nice top-level domain to your GDK so that you don't run it by localhost 3000 anymore, 3003 or whatever, but that you're able to have a nice top-level domain that resolves locally. Then the general process is, and I will just open this up a bit bigger. The general process is that GDK will send commands to the GitLab runner. The GitLab runner will use Docker. The Docker will send the commands to the virtual machine running in VirtualBox. And then there's this bit missing in the documentation right now, and I'm hoping to document everything we talk about today. If you have any questions, just write them in the Zoom chat. I have it in the other window, or make remarks in the document, please. So the critical part that is missing is that the communication, because the Docker machine, of course, has to have access to your GDK to pull the actual code it's going to execute. And this bit is missing. And then if the job is running, you know, Docker is sending its results to GitLab runner, and GitLab runner will send it back to the GDK so that you can display it in the nice screen. So yeah, that's what we are going to do today. And save and close. And so I'm assuming we are using a Mac here. And I have this, should be readable for all. So I'm now in the GDK folder, and I'm just doing a brew update so that we get the newest versions of all brew libraries there. As prerequisites, I have the GDK installed, and I have the VirtualBox already installed. I can show the VirtualBox right now. It's where is it? Ah, yeah, it's here. You can see I have, yeah, we don't want to do that right now. I have an Ubuntu machine and some other machines that have nothing to do with Docker. And what I'm just going to do, I'm going to install Docker. Typing when some people are watching is always nice. And the GitLab runner. Should take a few seconds. Now it's saying all these nice things you can ignore. So clear your screen, everything is fine. And as I said, Docker machine, you have to create a virtual machine. There you have the Docker machine command, and create. And you actually can configure everything really nice. I'm just going to make it right here. So if, for example, you could say with how big the disk of the Docker machine should be at a maximum, how many CPUs it should have, and we are just going to do that. So we are going to do Docker machine create and give it, I mean, I have like 8 cores, so we give it like 4. And because sometimes Docker images can get a little bit bigger, I will give it like 30 gigabytes. And we'll give it a bit more RAM, not too much, because GDK is taking a lot of RAM as well. So maybe like 2 gigabytes of RAM. And we forgot to specify a name, and I always just use default, because normally I'm setting up just one Docker machine, but you could set up like several and use them for different purposes. But I never had the need for that. And yeah, so let's, it takes a while. It basically downloads an ISO image of a Linux VM. Then it's creating some SSH magic, and that's that. So now we're waiting for the VM to be created. And normally you just have to, when you start working with the GitLab-ci, you would have to start this Docker machine VM. And I'm actually linked aliases here. So in the snippets, I put that in my bash.rc file, and I use the alias DMS for Docker machine start and DMK for Docker machine kill. And what this basically does, because you have to tell Docker, you basically can point Docker to any machine that has Docker installed. And you can set environment variables. And Docker machine actually has this command docker machine env default. And there it says, like, these are the environment variables you have to export. And you can run this eval command. And what I'm doing with my aliases is, oops, I'm now moved my window, always good. What I'm now did with my aliases, I basically start the thing and I write these environment variables into a temporary file, which I load if I open a new terminal, because otherwise for each terminal you would have you would have to run the command again. So just run the DMS thing, and it wrote it now to the terminal. So now we can try it out. We have Docker, can run Docker PS. Normally you would get an error here if Docker couldn't connect to the machine. And we could pull an image, for example, Ruby 2.1, and we see it works. Nice. What will we do next? We actually wait for the image here, because later on you have to define a default image. And yeah, so we have that image then and can use it. Next point on the agenda. There are some settings you have to set in the GDK, and they're mainly described in the how to runner document I linked. And otherwise, I'm just opening a new terminal here. I'm already in the JDK. And so the most important thing you have to do first is you have to echo the 0.0.0.0 address into a host file. This file will be read by the JDK, and it allows not just your local host, but everyone in your network to connect to your GDK if it's running. So please be careful if you're working out of a co-working space. But I assume there couldn't be done too much damage on your local GDK. And there's actually a second, there's actually a second thing we want to do. We want to, ls. sorry, I actually put the host file in the wrong directory. Please make sure that you put it in the GDK and not in the GitLab directory. And what I'm now going to do, I'm going to edit the, let's use a better editor for that. I'm going to edit the GitLab config the file, the GitLab file, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify another host. It will be a bit small, but I'm using like a top-level domain for that. So I will use something that doesn't exist so that we don't get into conflicts. Please don't use .local, because if you use .local, Mac will have problems with Bonjour services. I think there was the .dev domain. I don't know if it's used now. So let's just use a domain that will never be used, or let's just say gitlab.lipert. We save the file, and now we just have to add the alias to our hosts file. We have to do that with sudo nano etc hosts, and I have to type in my password. And you can see I already added the line with the alias. That's indented right. Which points to the local host with gitlab.lipert. Cool. So now we should be able to run the GDK. And oops, please GDK run. And it should be accessible from HTTP. Please make sure that you start with HTTP, otherwise Google will search for the thing because it's not a normal valid top-level domain. And I have this version of the running under 3003. So let's just wait for a second for everything to start. Yeah, you can see that Rails is working, and Webpack as well. In the meantime, I'm going. So, yeah, I already have saved the credentials, so we can log in. And if you go to a project now, it should say as a clone URL, give you the HTTP URLs should say like the top-level domain you entered, gitlab.lipert, the port, and that's actually a good sign. Now we can go to the admin runners page and start configuring the runner. These things are important because now you basically tell the runner where your GDK is and set it up. And it's all described in this document. We have installed the GitLab runner. Let's go into the GDK directory. ls, yeah, everything is nice. And you have to run the command gitlab runner register, and then the config and gitlab runner config.toml. Now it will ask you for the address, and it's just the address we configured. We put it in here. We enter the token. Then description doesn't matter. Tags don't matter. And whatever. I mean, I don't know, probably if you register a runner for a certain project, you could lock it here, but we're registering it for the whole instance, so it should be fine. The executor is Docker. And we are entering the default image here. So now everything is fine. We entered the config, but now we just have to do one minor thing. And not sudo. We are just going to edit the file. And basically what is missing here is a backlink to our local instance. And what we are going to do is, in this runner's Docker section, we are going to specify an extra host. We should take the whole line. And we'll enter our top level domain here. And the funny thing is, I think I have it in a picture, that there is a virtual network. And by convention, this virtual network will have the default IP addresses 192.168.99.100 for your Docker machine, for the virtual machine, and 192.168.99.1 for your local host, for your Mac. So now we can save that. And we are going to run the GitLab runner. Actually, just using that, reusing that command and saying we're going to run it in a debug level. I suppose they, yeah, seems like my fonts are a bit off in the presentation mode, but now the runner is running in the foreground. You can see the GDK running, the runner running, everything's fine. It's checking for jobs all the time. And now what we are going to do, we are going to add a project which has a job. Oh, wrong GitLab there. And there is this nice repository by Olivier. Actually, we should use not the image. So we have this nice repository by Olivier. We just copy the HTTPS URL. We create a new project. We import a project by URL. Let it be public. And it's a really a small project, which basically has a simple GitLab-ci file, which just copies fake SAST and DAST results into the results, and then it can be displayed in the front end. So we're going to CI/CD. We're going to run the pipeline on master. And now if everything's all right, it should start with one of the jobs. And if we are going in there, we can see the live log. And it looks really good, because at the moment you're cloning the repository and it actually works out. It seems like the connection is working. Yeah, the job succeeded. So Olivier was also so nice to give us a feature branch. Let's create a merge request for those two.
It was not me, it was Fabio.
I
just steals his work.
Okay. So Fabio was so nice to give us a feature branch. And now we have the feature branch, and there should be a pipeline starting soon. And I hope so, at least. Could be because we imported it that we have to trigger the pipeline manually, because we didn't have a push event. So all the credit goes to Fabio. And if you go back to the merge request, it will take a few seconds to run the SAST and the DAST and all the ASTs. And then we should see the nice results. Yeah, that's basically all that there is to it. And do you guys have, and girls and people, do you have any questions? Or would this help you? Is it explained enough? Something missing. I'm going to write it up in the documentation of the GDK as well. And because I think from the documentation, the most crucial step that is missing is the link back. I think at the moment the document documents, you know, how you can configure everything with an IP, but I think it's much more easier and user friendly to configure it with such an with a fake top level domain. That's at least the thing I always did before I joined GitLab. Yeah. So now if we reload the page, there should be the security scanning. Yep.
Does this project include like resolved issues? So things that were previously broken that you've resolved as a part of this?
Yeah, I think so. There's like one fixed vulnerability here.
Happy days. That's really good. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if we want to have a official security reports repo where we can, you know, always have the latest state of the art in, but you even could check out the real test reports of the security product team. So, but it obviously takes more time to run to download all the real things and run the real Java Maven analysis and whatnot. But if you're debugging something specific that was reproduced there, you could even clone the test Maven repo. I won't do it now because I believe I will break something if I do it now because I didn't try it before. Yeah. So I'm going to stop the recording.